Welcome everyone to our third pass at the Fizzbuzz Kata. My name is Andy. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're enjoying this process as much as I am. So let's just kick things off. Um, Fizzbuzz Kata, write a program that prints the numbers from 1 to 100. For multiples of 3, print Fizz. For the number, for print Fizz instead of the number, and for multiples of 5, print Buzz, and for numbers which are multiples of both 3 and 5, print Fizzbuzz. So we have our file set up, ready to go. If we look back to what we did last time, we spent a lot of time on our tests. I'm pretty happy with the way our tests are looking. We did a lot of good stuff in our code as well. We have a lot of code in this file. It's not super obvious, and we have this function here which is mixing two different concepts. So it's creating our numbers and running our rules. But the rule idea worked pretty well. Last time we had some problems with spelling. I think I've spelled multiple different ways, and we had some problems with creating modules at the end, mostly because of a typo. So hopefully this time we won't make the same mistake. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. We have a failing test. We're going to go ahead and kill that. And we want to test. Oh. Our IDE is being helpful. And we want to test returns an array. Okay, so we expect Fizzbuzz to be array. So we'll have to bring in a library for that to work. Go ahead and require just extended. Okay. So we expected it to be an array, but it's undefined. So let's go ahead and return. There we go. And let's spell returns correctly. So this is the test we've written pretty much every time. Let's go ahead and write another test. We expect there to be 100 numbers, and we haven't actually tested that in the past, so we're going to make that our second test this time. Returns 100. Let's call them items, because they're not always going to be numbers. So we expect Fizzbuzz length to be 100. So that's going to go ahead and fail. So it's a length 0. We want it to be 100. Let's go ahead and create our loop. I equals 1. I less than or equal to 100. I plus. And we'll go we need an array to put things in. So we'll do let values. Return our values. And let's go ahead and do real quick, we'll start with just pushing undefined. We just want to make sure that we have the right number of places, not that they're populated. So now let's go ahead and make sure that those are numbers. Or if not a multiple of 3 or 5. I know some of this might be getting repetitive. That's kind of the point, that we're thinking through, and we're building up not just muscle memory in our hands, but kind of in our minds as well, that when we start seeing these same problems, we have these same tools at our disposal, and we develop new tools to handle new scenarios. So, if this is boring watching me type, let me know in the comments. If you think there's something that could be more exciting, let me know. Okay. So we are looking at our index to be 1. Okay, so it's undefined instead of 1. Let's go ahead and change this to I. Let's go ahead and start doing some of our refactorings here. So we have values equals nothing. We go have our before each. We go ahead and say our values is equal to Fizzbuzz, and we want a function called Fizzbuzz. I think we called it of last time. That worked out pretty well. Just because we did something last time doesn't mean we have to do it the same way this time. It's good to experiment and figure things out. Let's go and change this to Fizzbuzz of 1. Okay, let's go ahead and make a couple of these. 2 to be 2, 4 to be 4, 98, 98. Okay. So now we have our tests being built up. Over here we have our building out our numbers. So the next test we know is going to be fizz for 3, but we'd be coming in here and we'd be putting in that code just right into what we've already written. So just like we did last time, and making the same mistake as from before. So let's go ahead and split out this into a function. Let's call it function, let's say generate numbers. Taking in max number. And we'll go ahead and copy these. So we go from, in theory, we could have just left that as 100, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now we can do the exact same thing, but call generate numbers 100. And that should be the exact same output. So we have this number function generate numbers. Last time we kind of ran into a problem where we, when we went to write Fizzbuzz Whiz, generate numbers, or not with generate numbers, but with, we had problems bringing them in. Let's go ahead and split this out into its own thing. I don't think this code is going to change much. There's other ways we could write this that may not be that would work, but this should be pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and here, and let's go ahead and go touch. Let's still call it generate numbers. And we'll go ahead and open that up. Okay, and we'll go ahead and copy and paste this over here. And we'll do module exports equals generate numbers. So if we go ahead and comment this out, we should be able to go ahead and bring in, const generate numbers equals require. Generate numbers JS. And we'll switch back to our other console real quick. That went ahead and worked fine. Now it appended I appended JS. It didn't auto append. Let's make sure, see if that. Okay, so that of course fails. So we don't need the JS on there. It's going to be looking for a JS file. So our Fizzbuzz implementation right now is generate numbers, and then we return those numbers. So let's go ahead and start our Fizz test. This is the start of our implementing of rules. Returns Fizz if a multiple of 3. It's a little hard to type and talk sometimes. I start talking and want to type what I'm saying, even if I'm talking about something slightly different. So expect Fizzbuzz of 3 to be Fizz. Okay, so our test is right. So now we have these numbers, and so let's do a for each. We want a callback function here, so we're going to go item Well, do we want to do that, or do we want to... Let's try a map. And so we'll have our item. And then we will just return. So return values map. And let's say if item 1, 3 turn fizz return item. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I've got an itch that I'm scratching. Okay, we want to go ahead and pull that out into rules. So let's go ahead and create a Fizzbuzz rule. And its criteria is a function that takes a number, and go ahead and return num mod 3 0. And we want our replacement. Oh, we're creating an object here to be fizz. Okay, so let's go ahead and say const rules. Fizzbuzz rule. So we want, for each of our values, we want to loop through our rules. And if the rule dot criteria, call it item, then our result plus equals rule dot replacement. Okay, so we need our let result equal empty string. And so now we either want to return item or if result is not equal to an empty string, we return result. Okay. So let's go ahead and implement a few more of our tests. Six, 9, 99. Okay. So we have this rule that we're going to want to reuse, and then we have this kind of logic here, this function that we're going to want to reuse. So let's start by pulling out the rules, and so let's go ahead and create another file. Let's just call this rules. We'll just put all the rules in one file for now. Go ahead and switch back to our tests. Rules. Oh. And let's go ahead and say we have our Fizzbuzz rule. We'll just copy this over. And let's go ahead and go export. So we're calling this Fizzbuzz rule. This is actually just the Fizz rule. Fizz equals, right now we have it called Fizzbuzz rule. But we actually want that to be Fizz rule. Okay, and if we go ahead and const rules equals require rules, then we can get rid of that and change this to rules.fizz, I think. Okay, let's go ahead and try. If we do rules dot fizz, cannot access rules before initialization. Oh, yeah, we are blocking our own name. So let's call this rules list, and we change this to here. Go through our rules list. There we go. So what I did before may have been fine, but I was shadowing this variable with a variable in here. That won't be a problem when we split things out, but okay. Okay, so we have our rules in a different file. And so now we have this function here. Let's go ahead and pull that out into its own function. So let's say this is to process our rules. So here we need to make a decision. Are we going, is this function going to be for a number, or is it going to be for our list of numbers? Well, for our example, we only need the list. In the future, there might be cases where we'd want to know what is the, for this number with these rules applied, what is the output? But if we don't need those now, let's save that kind of refactoring for later. We could always pull that out. So our rules are going to be, we're going to take an array. Numbers and rules. Oh, hit a wrong key there. So we have a result, we have our rules. So we just brought the inside. We want to bring the whole thing in. And go ahead and close it off here at the end. Let's go ahead and comment this out for a second. And so our values are now called numbers. So we loop over numbers. Item, these are going to be numbers. We'll call it num. Criteria num. Or else we return num. Okay. And let's go ahead and say return process rules with our values and our rules list. Okay. So now we have a, so it turns out here we're not modifying our values here anymore. Let's go ahead and const that. And we've decided those are now numbers and not just values. So numbers. So this is called process rules. It could also be called process numbers. Yeah, let's try that, process numbers. Okay. Let's go ahead and, again, let's go ahead and extract this into its own file. So I've done it that way a couple times. Let's go ahead and come here and add. We're going to call that process numbers.js. Let's go ahead and move it over. Go ahead and cut and paste. Go ahead and close that down. We'll go ahead and export. Do exports equals process numbers. We don't need to bring anything else in here. Let's go ahead and bring in require process numbers. Okay. Let's go to our Fizzbuzz tests and say we'll go ahead and test. Returns buzz if a multiple of 5. Fizzbuzz of 5 to be buzz. Okay, so we expect buzz. We got 5. Let's go ahead and go into our rules, and we'll go ahead and create another rule. Call this our we'll call this our buzz rule. When we divide by 5, we want to return buzz. And we want to go ahead and export our buzz rule. Okay. And now if we add to our rules, rules.buzz, our tests pass. So we'll go ahead and create a few more. Let's see, 10 and 100. Okay, and now we can go ahead and add our tests for Fizzbuzz. If a multiple of 3 and 5 okay, and we expect Fizzbuzz of 15 to be Fizzbuzz So that worked pretty well. Um, 30, 90, all of these should give us the same thing. So now we have Fizzbuzz. Basically means we are applying the rule fizz and the rule buzz to our generated numbers and returning. So this is much less code to understand. Obviously, if you want to understand what everything is doing, I mean, you have to dig in. But if our name's good, so generate numbers, I would expect this to generate 100 numbers. Process numbers. Maybe this could be a better name. But overall, this does mean that if we wanted to implement Fizzbuzz, Fizzbuzz Whiz, we could essentially create a Fizzbuzz Whiz function, add another rule, and go from there. We could have lots of different rules, lots of different ways to process our numbers, and we'd really only care about having different rule lists and different. We would just need different rule lists. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's look. Our rules are pretty straightforward. Go ahead and clean things up. Process numbers. Okay. Let's look at this here. Let's try something. Equal to empty string. Result. Num. Okay, so that cleans that up a bit. So we have a result. We for each on our rules. Okay. Generate numbers, pretty straightforward. Okay. Let's look at our Fizzbuzz Kata. Is the code written clean? I think it's pretty clean. Each function is easier to understand. If you care about generating numbers, you look in generate numbers file, as opposed to our previous, where you kind of had to look in here. Generating numbers was actually hidden here. You couldn't actually see that you were actually generating numbers. It's also something that's reusable. If you wanted the numbers to 1 to 100, or 1 to 1,000, or 1 to 50, we can call that. Our rules, I think, are pretty straightforward. Processing. Processing is pretty good. Maybe there's a better way to write this. Not seeing an obvious way, and I'm maybe we'll have to sleep on this and see if there's something, if we jump back into it, something that would bother us. I like the way our tests are turning out. And of course, if we wanted to write a Fizzbuzz whiz test, we could easily write that. We could easily rewrite a Fizzbuzz whiz, and we could generate another file that helps us print console out the results here, like we did in our first kata, if we wanted to do that. But that's kind of that feels trivial. So let's jump back in. What if a new requirement comes along? If a new requirement comes along, we have to generate a new rule and either add it to our rules list or create a new function that and create a rules list there and just run it through our process. So feeling pretty good about this. If somebody knows a better way to implement this or a different way to implement this, go ahead and leave comments, and we'll look at them. And ideas for after the dojo. Yeah, all this is pretty trivial. So I think this is going to be our last Fizzbuzz kata for a while. We may jump back in and do a Fizzbuzz if we decide to do this in a different language. For instance, if we want to try TypeScript, we'll probably start with Fizzbuzz because, I mean, it's a pretty simple one, but it'll allow us to make sure we have everything up and going and we understand all the ins and outs and how to create our interfaces and our classes and our, whatever it is we end up doing in a TypeScript way. But so now I'm going to go ahead and call this video closed. Thanks for watching with me. Go ahead and leave any comments that you have for me. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.